Probably a lot of you had this dream of being on the grind and eventually becoming better than everyone else around you. But it's a question in the back of my head that I've never truly explored. How much do you need to practice and draw? Drawing, after all, is a combination of knowledge and practice. And it wasn't until recently that I realized that I don't actually have that much practice compared to knowledge. So I had the idea of setting up a daily practice schedule. This is a 10-minute sketch I did of a reference photo. It was only done in 10 minutes, but I still want to improve it. I bet a lot of you has heard of the classic just practice or just draw. And of course all the videos on the internet explaining why this is bad advice. By the way, I'm not an expert, this is just thoughts and notes from a fellow learning artist. But what should you be practicing? You know the answer.
Fundamentals.
We've all heard of them by now. There's 3D forms, shading, color theory, and many more. One often mentioned is anatomy.
I agree fundamentals is a very commonly misused concept. If we're talking about fundamentals,
how is anatomy part of the basic art fundamentals? What is
I don't really think of anatomy as a...
Now I've got another question. What even is art fundamentals? Can you define the words art fundamentals? Surprisingly, it's not an easy question. Art has existed for a very, very, very long time. Yet somehow, we still don't have a clear definition of art fundamentals. You're gonna see someone's list of art fundamentals, and it might have gesture in it. And then you'll see another list that might replace gesture with, I don't know, line work, or composition, or anatomy.
Actually, it should just be called figure drawing since you're specifically drawing the body.
You might also see people going like, oh, 3D forms is the only fundamental because you need to know how to draw 3D forms in order to draw anything. My opinion, fair guess, seems reasonable, being the foundation to draw anything, people, objects, and so on. However, what about color or composition? Something that isn't necessarily bound by perspective or 3D forms. Also, if we're going by this definition that it's the core foundation that everything stands on, it should actually be 2D shapes because you need to know how to draw 2-dimensional shapes in order to draw 3-dimensional ones. But then again, you need to know how to draw lines in order to draw 2-dimensional shapes, so line work is actually the core foundation. But in order to draw a line, you need to know how to hold a pen. But core, if you want to make appealing art, 3D forms are important because it's appealing to the human eye. You even said that in your other video. I did. But not all appealing art has to be perfectly 3-dimensional. There's plenty of art out there that breaks the illusion of 3D, yet still looks appealing. And that's another thing. Which fundamentals that are important for a specific artist can heavily depend on what kind of art they even strive for. If you want my definition of art fundamentals, it's core principles, skills, and subjects that many, maybe not all, but still many artists study to create appealing visual art regardless of their style or medium. And in my opinion, I don't believe that there's one or two fundamentals that's above all else like a few people are claiming. They all come together somehow, and sometimes they might not even need each other. There's plenty of appealing art without shadows, without colors, without perfect anatomy or perfect 3-dimensional form. Now we're slowly approaching the what is considered art territory, which, quite frankly, I just don't want to go in. And if anyone has anything to say or disagree with something that I said about fundamentals, please comment. I am very interested in hearing more people's opinion on what is art fundamentals, cause I'm gonna be real with you all. Even after years of drawing, I'm still unsure what art fundamentals even are. This is what my plan was for a daily session of practice. I came up with this plan in like 20 minutes. First, a little warm-up. A few chiseled drawings with 1 minute each. I found this website with random poses. It was quite useful. I also did a few line work exercises. I traced over thin circular shapes and I did a page of straight lines. To practice 3D forms, I drew boxes, some random ones, and I also did a bit of the cube rotation exercise. And finally, I decided to find 2 artworks that I liked. I would then break down the composition, I broke down the values and how they're grouped together. I also picked a few random colors, and I tried to pick them by hand in order to somewhat train my eyes into picking colors better. Wow, I came up with this in like 20 minutes. This is gonna be awesome. I'm gonna be on that art grind. I'm gonna do this every single day, and I'm gonna be... Yeah, so I like art and all, but there's just no way I'm doing all of that on a daily basis. After trying to research a tiny bit about it, the most important thing is consistency. Like, even just 10 or 15 minutes a day is more than enough to prevent you from getting rusty. Some of you have likely heard of the 10,000 hour rule, but is this true even for art? This is Nick, an artist with some of the fastest improvement that I've ever seen. In 2 years, he went from this to this. You could say, oh, it's because he's talented, which I disagree on. I don't really believe that talent exists in art, but that's a discussion for a whole other video. Point is, 365 days in a year, 2 years is 730 days. And let's say you put an unrealistic, absurd amount of hours into pure drawing and practicing every single day. Like 12 hours of just pure practice and drawing. That's still less than 10,000. And I doubt that Nick did more than 12 hours a day. Some have drawn since childhood and still aren't as skilled as Nick. What exercises I chose was heavily gonna affect the outcome. Because here's the thing, not all study and practice is equal. If I'm planning to do a bit of consistent practice every day, it has to be efficient and interesting enough so I won't feel too fatigued or burned out. I also changed the structure of my schedule. Instead of just a daily set of things that I do every day, it's gonna be like a buffet. Instead of a strict schedule like before, I pick and choose which exercises I want to focus on. I could load up organic forms one day, and on another I could grab a few sad little cubes, mush them together and call it a meal. Maybe even both if I'm motivated. For the warm-up ideally shouldn't take too long. Nothing really changed though, it's still just lines and gestures. For 3D forms, earlier I just did some box rotations. The reason why people recommend the box exercise is because it trains you to not only see, but also think in a three-dimensional space. You practice perspective, 3D thinking and straight lines, all in one exercise. But I replaced it with this exercise. With this exercise, you practice all of those things like the rotation one. Not only do you have to keep in mind the perspective for each cube being rotated, but now you also have to think of how they interact with each other. At the core here, again, I'm not a professional. Some of you might say, oh, but your art is so beautiful. I'm still learning. So I don't actually know which exercises are more efficient than the other. I'm mostly going by my guts and what exercises I could find. In order to not get caught up with structured forms like cubes, I also drew organic forms. I basically found a fruit or vegetable, and I drew cross-contour lines to highlight the 3D shape. Next is weekly exercises that I have to complete. The focus of these was to try and build a larger visual library. A visual library is basically the collection of what you've seen, stored in your memory. If you're more familiar with something, it's obviously going to be easier to draw. We can build a larger visual library through observation. It could be observing photos or other artworks. Building a visual library is also another reason why so many artists recommend using reference when you draw or study. The first exercise, drawing at least one reference photo a week. I found a reference photo, I broke down the skeleton and the muscles in order to practice a bit of anatomy, and then on another layer, I drew the hair and the clothing. A simplified skeleton and simplified muscles is fine as well for the practice. I mainly wanted to do this exercise, that way I could get more familiar with drawing clothing folds. The second exercise is finding at least 2 artworks per week and breaking them down. It's basically the same as before. For the third exercise, at least one Just a Drawing Party video. I learned about these Just a Drawing Party videos and I thought they were a nice exercise. You get to observe some wacky poses that you might have never seen or thought about. Another exercise I tried is just a still life study, but I quickly gave up on it because it just took way too long and I got way too bored. Yeah, so I kinda just forgot about it. Could be because of burnout, could be because I just forgot. I did make this artwork here, so it could be burnout. But what happened then after this artwork? Not really much, to be honest. I mostly designed some OCs. I also played a lot of Wuthering Waves. This video was actually supposed to be made a lot sooner. I just kinda kept procrastinating. I did a bit of warm-up and a tiny bit of practice. And after that, I tried doing a 10-minute drawing. And it turned out like something. Can I conclude that I am now able to draw more efficiently? I mean, it's only been a few weeks, you're not gonna see a lot of improvement. I would say though, that my skills didn't really dwindle that much. So, should you practice daily? I don't know, well, it would probably help if you can do it consistently. I tried it, I just practice every now and then, and that's it. If you guys have any tips, any great exercises, tell me, because I want to do the least amount of practice with the most amount of effect. If anyone's interested, my Twitch is in my description. Maybe I'll do a WoW stream on Twitch when the new patch drops. I got a Twitter and Pixiv as well. And goodbye, that's it for today.